Namaskar and welcome to Roots Mati Majra. Roots Mati Majra is a digital platform focused on the marginalized. It's a bilingual digital platform, and we believe in ethical digital journalism. Today, we are talking about tribals and religion, and we have with us social scientist Dr. Bobby Luthra Sinha. She is specializes in tribal studies and also environmental studies, and she is presently at Stockholm, and she's joined us from Stockholm to talk about tribals and religion. Dr. Luthra, what's the religion of Indian tribals? Is there a common religion, or what is the present stage? If you take the total population of tribals, how many are Hindus? How many are Christians? How many are Muslims?
So, the tribals, it's a misnomer to think that the tribals have one official religion, or they can be clubbed under one religion, or that if they convert into Hinduism or and come into the fold of Christianity, that will be their religion. Because the tribal religions are very closely related to their nature and to the nature, as well as their rituals and practices around the biological and the physical space, which is made of nature, and as well as dependent upon the movement of the sun and the star and the moon. So, now to understand what religion do the tribals practice in the current scenario. So, let's go back to the census of 2011. In that, since the tribals do not have a separate religion or a religious code, as many other mainstream communities of India, uh, there were 7.9 million people who marked themselves as other. Out of this, 4.9 million people specified themselves as coming from the Sarna Dharma. The Sarna Dharma is a dharma which has been recently proposed as the, let us say, an overview, as a universal category of tribal religion. But aside from that, in the 2011 census, the Gondi, the the Gond tribals who have their own religion are very strong about their identity. So the Gondi religion had come out, had been marked by 1 million people. So you can imagine 4.9 million people in India, Sarna, 1 million Gondi, and then 5 lakhs from the Sari Dharma. This is another tribal religion. Then Donye Poloism is another religion. Then we have Khasi. Then we have San Mahi. So all the religions cannot be termed as such, but in the census itself, if you think of categories, there were still others who marked themselves, in the other category and specified as tribal religion or nature religion and animists.
Okay.
So there is
So,
a diversity.
okay.
There is a diversity component in tribal religion itself.
Okay. There is this feeling that in Northeast, most of the tribals are Christians. And
Yes.
there is this, in Chhattisgarh, I am told that there is a movement to make a lot of this tribals into Hinduism. How
Yes.
far they have succeeded? And do they still have the tribal practices? Because one of the reasons why I ask you is that all the discussions on people propagating uniform civil code, they say we exclude tribals. That's very important thing.
Right.
Because they are out of even this uniform civil code for those who are ardent proponents of uniform civil code.
Yes. So I think, if I take your question backwards and come back to the Hindu and the Christian aspect a little later, let's clear this idea of the Uniform Civil Code. And I think this has been recently taken up in discourse and debate by the Uttarakhand, a presentation of the Uniform Civil Code, its idea, its imagination on that. However, the tribal societies have been kept outside of the purview of the Uniform Civil Code. This is because being a tribal itself is a specific identity right which is recognized under various provisions of the Constitution of India. So, The fundamental rights of the Constitution of India guarantee the tribals their status and their religious freedom. The directive principles of state policy, they are earmarked for the state to let the tribals have their separate identity. Then Article 352 of the Indian Constitution, once again, the 350 of the Indian Constitution allows the tribal communities the right to conserve their distinct language, scripts, and cultures. So, therefore, they've been kept outside of this civil code debate in because you would have to change the entire constitutional scenario. You would have to open a Pandora's box if you want to let the tribals inside one single civil code. However, having said that, let us come to some good points that the uniform civil code debate was raising in this Uttarakhand instance, and that was, for instance, the prohibition of polygamy, and child marriage. These are some progressive or good steps that one can look forward to. And then, of course, there was the inclusion of the equal property rights for sons and daughters. This is a progressive step for many communities, and in fact, as well as the tribal communities, because the tribal communities themselves replicate the social context of India, whereby there could be various kinds of discriminations that women face. No community, no society, no religion is perfect, and that applies to all. So the Uniform Civil Code is proposing a few progressive concepts. And of course, the recognition of both adopted and biological children. These were a few good points that, so we will not, sort of desecrate it en masse, but there are
Yeah.
limitations. Therefore, tribals cannot be thought to be included in the civil code, the Uniform Civil Code, not as yet. Not
Hmm.
as yet.
Okay. Okay. So what about the other religions? Which like in Northeast, they say most of the tribal groups are Christians or Baptists, yeah, among the Christians. So
Absolutely.
and there is this Hinduization which is happening in many parts. So how do you look at that?
So I think if we look at it from the point of view of historical evolution, the nearness of communities to other communities, then as the forests and the nature cover reduced, the people came into contact with one another, and of course, some of the tribals communities themselves, adapted their own cultural institutions and sort of took to beliefs maybe from Hinduism, and others, for instance, even from the British period onwards, some of them took to Christianity as well. So it was vicinity, it was natural evolution in some cases, and also once they've adopted the religion, you know uh, there could be histories of conversion either by choice or by force. But nonetheless, when those who want to convert the tribals into Hinduism allegate that the movement into Christianity was because the tribal peoples thought of it as an escape route, to sort of acquire a minority status or get minority rights. Nonetheless, the those tribals who have adopted, and converted to Christianity and Hinduism both, they do not leave their customs and cultural beliefs and faith systems overnight. They
Okay.
continue to practice their traditions, and rituals. And so, for instance, I'm in touch uh, with the tribal communities on both the sides of the Himalayas. So
Hmm.
that would cover Himachal, Uttarakhand, and it would also cover the tribal communities from the northeast. So they tell us that, even though even though we some of us have taken to Christianity or Hinduism, we still do not consider, let us say, Christmas or Diwali as or as religious festivities which defines the end all and the be all of our existence. In the
Hmm.
tribal, there are customs and rituals and practices related to their language, which celebrate festivities around blossoming of flowers or rivers and waters. Jal jungle zameen ka jo reference hai, वो
Hmm.
हिंदुइज्म एंड क्रिश्चियनिटी में इतना नहीं होगा. But still, you will see that reference in the everyday,
Hmm.
let us say the everyday, the ethnographic present of the tribal people. And of course, we do have reports we do have reports that inside Chhattisgarh, there are people who've started these movements to convert the tribals into Hinduism.
Okay.
However, this is worrisome because forcible conversions or versus those where the tribal themselves exercise their agency, either because of a preference or because of a historical affinity or because of or their will, that is much different than using force. And that is something
Okay.
which is a worrisome factor in today's religion, the debate on tribal religion.
Okay. Which means that you are saying, telling me that it's almost like the African situation where most of the tribals, at least I have seen in South Africa, they may be Christians. Most of them are Christians there, but they strictly adhere to their tribal customs, in terms of personal codes and everything. But
Absolutely.
like religion is not a, as you said, the null and end all of things.
Yes, some religious festivities are not the end all or beyond, be all of all their practices. So, like for the African example that you've given us, so their costumes, for instance, their adornments, their embellishments, their cultural practices remain with them. So, the particularly vulnerable tribes like the Begas, they are known for their tattoos.
Yeah.
Godna. It's called the culture of Godna in Hindi, So they are known over their tattoos. So the women will have tattoos all over their forehead, their arms. Similarly, you will find that in African communities as well. So having a religion does not mean moving entirely away or forcing somebody to move entirely away from all their cultural practices.
Okay. And as such, what is their approach to religion? Is it for is it ancestral worship, which I'm told very common among the tribals across the world, or is it a quest for spirituality, as others will like to have to believe?
Yes, I think the tribals of India or the African tribes and the indigenous peoples of Americas, the Latin America and of course the United States of America, we can see that they have a specific understanding of religion which tilts towards spirituality and worship of ancestors. And this once again is rooted primordial in a very primordial way, in a very intricate way to the nature. So the ancestors are worshipped, and the society has two kinds of spaces. It imagines two kinds of spaces: a physical space and a cosmic space. So the tribals of India also worship their ancestors, but they believe that their ancestors reside in a cosmic space. However, the way to approach, like a bendición, like they say in Spanish, or let us say a blessing, which we would say in English, the way to seek the blessings, to get the blessings, and let harmony prevail in their society is through the physical natural resources. So Jal, Jangal, Zameen. And on that, they have added Astha and, of course, language, Bhasha. So
Okay.
all these are intricately related to the practiced tribal religions, And this is not just ancestors, it could also be that before they pluck food or flowers or herbs for their use, they will not just pluck it without any feeling. They are plucked with an emotion and a mantra is chanted.
Okay.
They are begging forgiveness from the plant, from the nature, to say that, look, we are taking away this fruit or this medicine to be ours, but we will make sure that we will replenish your resources and we will not exploit them to deplete you. That
Okay.
is the difference between, the tribal and the mainstream religions.
Okay.
The worship, the sacredness of objects, in
Okay.
everyday life.
So in a way, they are one with the nature. You are trying to tell me that they are one with the nature in all their activities. That is their religion. It is almost nature worship, is it not?
Nature worship, animism, totemism, of course, those are forms of worship. There could also be important objects such as stones,
Hmm.
or such as rivers, which demarcate one tribal zone from another tribal zone. So, of course,
Okay. Okay. So what about the personal codes? If if let's say Northeast tribal become, a lot of them are Christians, do they still practice the personal codes like you said about marriage and other familial things?
Yes, they do, but now you see a lot of social mobility because times are changing. There is migration. Education is taking the tribal communities away from their, natural regions of being, and hence we do see that there is an intermingling. But whenever the marriage takes place within the traditional community, the traditional norms are definitely followed. So, for instance, I once did a research amongst uh, let us say, the domestic help, the girls who are coming in from Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, and some of them were Christians. So when I used to go and do research amongst them, I used to ask. One of them was preparing for her marriage, and she was a young girl. She was 23-year-old. So they've come out of those zones to earn, it reasonably enough so that their poor parents can sustain their marriage rituals. So they're collecting money, but meanwhile their marriages get fixed. So this young girl, she had some text from the Bible. She was a Christian. She was a tribal Christian. She was from the Gondi community, but a Christian. And then she said that, the father has given me this text to memorize. And I asked her, really, are you looking forward to your wedding? She said, yes, I will memorize this entire text from the Bible and I will have to recite it. And she was happy and she was excited. And I asked her, what are you going to wear? She says, Didi, I'm going to wear my sari. So you
Okay.
see, there is a beautiful way of integrating. There is no imposition.
Mm.
So the wedding of the tribal Christian young girl will take place, inside a Chhattisgarh forest in a church. But she will be dressed in a sari and she will be using sindoor. This could be another way of, Sanskritization or borrowing from the Hindu culture as well.
Okay.
So I think, in essence, this is the beauty of diversity which makes India India.
Okay. Yeah. So, uh, uh, and you also talked about the uniform civil code. Uh, you think that there is a space for the uniform civil code to get into that tribal space? As of now, will there be, what is it apart from the constitutional things? If the things have changed, as you said, there is a kind of integration happening already. So,
Hmm.
is there a space to go there? In terms of social and the lifestyles which are changing.
Definitely, there is a space to go there, but it is a very deep and difficult question. And if we attempt to do it very suddenly, under like a frenzied understanding of Ek Bharat, Shresht Bharat, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, then it is not going to have the impact that is intended. That is to cover everybody in a rule of law. Or in a specific, let us say, uniformity. Now the problem is that, is this an attempt at assimilation? Integration is different. Like I told you, how they voluntarily will get married. They will be Christians, but they will be using a sari. They will be wearing their tribal. They will be practicing their tribal rituals, but at the same time, maybe a sindoor and bangles as well. So of course, that is integration. That has, the agency, the will of the person involved. But if you try and impose a civil code without the debate, without understanding the social system, without first looking at the social issues and helping them out, you know to let them have a level playing field of understanding what they want, then it reminds me of this scenario where, I'm sorry to use this word, where it is either about religious polpotism, where you think that, we have a formula and one size fits all. And if it is not religious polpotism, it is a romanticist hope that, about the melting pot. So when the United States of America wanted to solve its identity problems and wanted to bring all kinds of migrants, the whites and the non-whites, everybody in one fold, they
Mm.
thought of America as this imaginary melting pot of identities. However,
Mm.
it did not succeed. And the criticism was that the identities have remained intact while the pot has melted away. In India, we have so many challenges that the tribal India, it actually faces, and it resides in a parallel universe. Therefore, we wish that this step, if it is taken with consent, awareness, and the necessary humanitarian gestures that it requires to integrate.
Okay. You also said when you talk about integration, how far tribals have integrated with the main society in the last 75 odd years? In terms of literacy, in terms of access or assimilation with people, is it really something which we can be proud of?
No.
Okay.
In the sense that the tribal integration has been slow, and it has bordered on the margins of the periphery. So the existence of the tribal is actually very peripheral. First of all, they live in remote areas, and many of them, like the particularly vulnerable tribal groups of India, who call the PVTGs for short, they also, practice remoteness and isolation out of choice, like some of the tribes from the Andaman and Nicobar Islands would, you know. But the point is, when they take the essential steps towards integration, so for instance, with the changing forest policies, or because the extractive, the mineral and the metal industry now wants not just, let us say, now the corporates wants not just what is on top of the earth, but they also want to encroach and access what is below the earth where the tribals live. So whenever they do make an attempt at integration, it results in a very, a very forcible assimilation with a bad taste. So tribal society becomes in a disarray, and one should actually listen to the tribals when you want to document how much poverty the tribal areas still have, how much lack of access to health, water, uncontaminated water or potable water is such a big challenge in tribal areas. The tribal women have to sometimes traverse 5 kilometers uphill or downhill to get to a reasonable potable water area. What do you think integration or assimilation or Sabka Bharat, Sabka Vikas means for that tribal woman?
Okay. So it is still a long goal for integration, and I'm sure the government and other agencies will address these issues over a period of time. And thank you for today's session on tribal religion. We'll continue our debate on tribal issues later in English and Hindi both. And thank you for your time, Dr. Luthra.
Thank you so much.